so much for joining us on True View with True View Ministries. I'm Jamie Shaver. This is Julie Van Gorp. We're very grateful also to have some great guests with us today, Nancy, Kate, and Gina, all of whom are wives and mothers. Today's topic is treasuring your time, which is really making the most of our children's lives.
One of the things, Jamie, that I can say unequivocally is the child rearing years go by far quicker than you ever think. And I'll hear people go, oh, I can't believe my child's already in, kindergarten. And, now that I have children that are all 4 past college, I just want to go. If you think it goes fast during the elementary or even the high school years, college is a blink, And for us to just look and go, wow, we really only have these children in our home such a short time. We need to make the most of that time. But the reality is we also live in such an entertainment-saturated culture that there's so many things and options that are available to our kids to take them away from just being in the family and around us in a far greater degree than our parents and certainly our grandparents ever had to experience. Certainly we've got this organized sports games, which really weren't even a factor when I was being raised, and like I said, not my parents, but also the internet, the TV, the computer, that there's always something where they can go, not now, Mom, or drag me here, drag me there. And as a parent, you can get exhausted because every night of the week you can be on the go, taking your children from one activity to another.
I know that I have heard from several women that I've spoken to where they really feel like the best way to combat that their children getting involved in things that would be harmful to them is to just pack their lives full of activities. Almost like the busier they are, the better it is, the more they're going to stay out of trouble. And so the whole goal for their households have just been to cram pack the schedule. And I just think that we have to find a balance in that space. Gina, what are your thoughts on that?
It was funny, I was driving by my house and there was a sign that said something about sports, ages 3 and up for football and for cheerleading, and I thought, what 3-year-old can even run holding a ball? Or a girl, like what are they going to flip these little cheerleaders into the air? What are they doing with these kids? And I've struggled with it. We have talked about this in past Bible studies where you feel like you need to keep your kids in sports, in activities to keep them out of trouble, which is exactly what you said. And that's great and all, but activities don't keep them out of trouble. It's that strong home foundation, that love, that family, and that love and worship of God. Those are the things that I found with my kids that are so much more valuable. So now my kids on the weekend, my son always wants to do family game night. When are we going to do family game night? When are we going to do family game night? When are we going to do family game night? And it's great because it is a great bonding experience together. There are so many lessons that can be learned whenever, my short-tempered little boy is angry because he's losing at Sorry or somebody knocked him back to home or something. There's lessons to learn in that, but it's just that family bonding time and that connection that you have with each other. And I do think that lots of people want to have their kids in sports because we have to start them so young because of competitiveness. But unless my child is showing me some kind of real desire and real passion for something, I am not driving them everywhere and fighting for 2 hours with them to get into their uniform, them throwing themselves on the field. You just have to kind of follow what their real true passions are and just make sure that, you're following them on their you're just following their passions.
Might be driving their passions, and
yes.
And I think, Gina, it's important for us to ask what's the motive as parents behind us wanting to get our kids into all those activities.
Right.
You said you passed that sign, and as you were saying that, I thought that's your reaction. There's probably some other mom who's going,
let's do it.
I can finally get my 3-year-old away from me for a little bit of time,
Right.
and have someone else take them, or it's kind of like free baby care for that period of time. So I think for us to examine, what's really our agenda in wanting our kids to be in all those activities. And I think the real question is there anything in and of themselves that's wrong with these extracurricular activities? Is it that they themselves are an issue, or it's how we view them, use them, or when we got out of balance?
Well, for me, it was definitely getting out of balance. I can tell you with 3 kids, 8, 10, and 12, last year, Tyler you know, my youngest was in hockey, basketball, track, baseball. He also played violin at school, which had once a week a meeting after school. Caitlin, my 10-year-old, was in gymnastics, basketball, track, choir. And then my oldest, who's 12, had taekwondo, track, and plays the drums. And he had drum lessons before school on one day. And I had always been that parent. I can tell you, others can attest to it. I really always tried to limit my children's activities. And all of a sudden, I found myself trapped in the wheel, and I didn't know how I got there. And I was like, wait a minute, how did this happen? And one thing I can say is our family loves sports. We love the outdoors. We love playing sports. But what started to become more of a realization to me over the summer is that as much as my husband and I love sports, we should be playing sports with them in our backyard versus me racing them all over town and back. So this year we have instilled much stricter limitations on this because we do love sports so much. It was very easy for me to justify their participation in all these things because I think it's an excellent thing to learn, you know, what it feels like to win, what it feels like to lose, being part of a team sport, being accountable to other people, working hard. I like that stuff. But recognizing, oh, I don't know why it never dawned on me that I can't teach them that at the park in my neighborhood where we can throw the ball and hit the ball and play and do those things together as a family versus spending the time, money, and energy running all over the place. And of course, these weren't all going on all at the same time, but my calendar definitely looked like that of a completely frazzled mom running here and there and everywhere. And I really wondered, what was that teaching my children? What was the importance? What was I by my actions showing was important? Has anyone else ever felt like their calendar was out of control? Okay, just me.
I'm nodding. Just don't know what to say about that.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
I mean, 5 kids. It's, you know, and we limit.
Need to say more.
Yeah,
No.
5 kids, and I homeschool them. So,
Yeah.
yes, our calendar is very full, but we do limit what we do. We value family time. So we limit, you know, if it's music, it's music. If it's a sport, it's sport. But we don't have kids doing 5 activities at once. And it actually kind of works out that, you know, somebody else might play a spring sport, but somebody else has a fall sport. So we're not trying to take 5 kids.
So it's just one sport per season that you're doing versus
It
one
depends
sport
on the
at a
kid.
time.
My 2 older kids are very musical. That's their bent. My 2 littler boys are sports. So it kind of balances in what we're doing. I mean, it is a juggling act. But through all that, family time is so important to us. And we strategically put on our calendar family game night, family wiffle ball game night. Wiffle ball is a huge thing in our backyard. And what's great about that is you put them on a baseball team and you don't know what value that coach is teaching. But if I have someone who slams the bat at home and gets mad, we can stop right there and teach character. You can't trust a coach always to do that. So that's kind of nice about that. But we do kids cook dinner night. That's a big one in our house. Okay, you guys cook dinner. Write down what you want me to buy, and they cook it. It's not always good. But they cooked it, and I didn't. And then it comes clean up. That they always hate that part. They cooked. You clean up too. But
So
you know.
at what age, Kate, did you instill that? Because I think that's a tip that everybody is going
The
to
kids cook dinner night?
Yeah.
Well, we started that a couple years ago, but we pair a younger, since we have a big family, we pair a younger and an older kid together. So I can trust the 2 older ones when they have the younger kid to kind of work the stove. So you don't want anyone burn themselves. But you can
Chop off
do,
a finger.
but
So
you can
like
do.
at 10, 12,
Yeah,
around that age?
yeah, and you can
Okay.
pair them with a younger child and have them do that, and that's they love that night. That's fun, and they get to pick the menu. And like I said, it's not always good, but they did it, and they're working together, and then
And contributing to the family and feeling like they are adding to that. And it's certainly giving you a little bit of a relief during that
Yeah,
time.
and I think those things are so important. Those are the things our kids are going to remember growing up. And I always say that with homeschooling too. It's the fun things, those kind of things that are meaningful they're going to remember, not sitting down and doing math. They're not going to remember that. It's those fun activities that you bond as a family that are really important, I think, strategically to put on the calendar, along with whatever baseball practice you have.
Absolutely, Nancy.
Yeah, great ideas, Kate. Thanks for sharing those. I feel like for us, we've always limited their activities. None of my kids have been very active in sports. So they've done like Girl Scouts and we always do a Bible study as a family. We do community Bible study where they're studying the same thing that we're studying. So that's one activity every week that I do their lesson with them. And then we're gone one evening a week during most of the year, the school year, going through that with a small group that's of our age. So my husband and I are with couples, and the kids are with kids their age. So that's a nice thing. So we've limited it pretty well, but I mean, I can definitely attest to how fast that it goes. I have one that went to college this year, and you know, and as I dropped her off and drove back, you know, I just prayed, God, did I really teach her everything that I wanted to teach her? So like it goes fast. And
I
it's
would
just
say that's
more
the
and more.
verse that I feel like really struck me when I said that it kind of changed for me this summer is when I was reading in Psalms 90:12, and it says, "So teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom." And I thought, wow, that's that important that we need to number our days. Why is that? Because they're limited. And as I really pondered that, I thought, like you, oh my goodness, my son is going to be out of the house in 6 years, and already 12 looks like they just flew by. I'm already 2/3 of the way in. Have I really instructed him on those things that matter for eternity versus what matters here for the temporal?
And I think again, when we look to the greatest role model of all time, we can learn how to treasure our time. That Jesus himself was on the earth 33 years, but he really was only in, quote, full-time ministry for 3 years. But what he did during those 3 years has absolutely changed the entire course of history and everything in the world. And truly everything that we want to do, which is to bring glory to his name, is because of what he did that we know about through the Bible that's been recorded in those 3 years. And I just look and go, if he could do in 3 years what he did in 18 years that I've got with my children, I need to be making the most of every opportunity. And I think, as we look to God's Word, one of the stories that is just such a valuable one for us to consider is looking at the story of Jesus going to the home of Mary and Martha. And probably most people know this story that's recounted in Luke 10. And the essence of it is that Jesus is chiding Martha, who is going about and all concerned about, is her house in order? Is the cooking done? Is everybody happy? I'm the hostess with the mostess. And, Jesus really says, and it's a strong rebuke if you look within the original language, Martha, Martha, you are troubled about many things, but there's only one thing that's necessary. And he was chiding her because she'd come to him like a lot of our children do, like, hey, Mom, look at what the siblings doing over here. And she was doing that, like, look at my sister Mary. Look, she's not doing anything to help. But his response was, Mary has chosen the one thing that really matters. And I won't take that away. And I think that becomes the great challenge for us and parents when we want to teach them a lot of things. But how do we teach them that one primary thing? And how have you done that? That one thing, which is to sit at Jesus' feet to bring glory to his name.
Model.
And how do you do that?
The only way I can do it is to get up at 6 in the morning. So when my children get up, typically they'll come down and they'll see me doing my study. But for me, homeschooling was how I wanted to show that too, because I really wanted to teach my children God's Word. I don't think everybody should do that. I feel like that's a personal call that God put on me. So that's why I homeschool my children. So as we study history, we don't start with, the 1700s, whatever the school does. We start at Genesis. History starts with Adam and Eve. So I really like that. So we're growing in the Word together. They see me doing it separately. And I even think with the little ones, you speak about it constantly. You see a frog outside, and I just always, you look at the frog and you go, wow, God did that. Constantly pointing to God throughout the day and just speaking his name and reminding your children that he's there is so important.
Yeah.
So, Gina, you don't homeschool?
I certainly do not homeschool. I don't ever plan on it. I have been called to not homeschool. So we actually, I'm always doing some kind of a study or reading on my own of some sort, and my children always see me with a Bible right by me with notes. I'm always taking notes. I'm always researching. I'm always asking questions. But we also do make sure that we spend a good amount of time at the end of the evening in their rooms with them. And my children have many different varieties of children's Bibles. And luckily, my daughter's an avid reader, so they know all the stories. And my son, we were doing a devotional the other day, and we were talking actually about good and evil. And we were talking we said something about, we were talking about Genesis, and my son had said, you don't need to read me the story because I know that the snake tempted them. And I said, but you know who the snake was. So there's always little tidbits of information that you can give them, but spending that time together and letting them know how important God is in your life and relating it to their life. And then, just as you said, we do the same kind of thing. I'm like, can you believe that beautiful sky? God made the rain even. Like, that's beautiful. Just to bring those little things in so that they know all the time that everything relates to God. It's all about Him.
And you've got to really spend time with your children
Yes.
to have those teachable moments.
Yes.
And a
Yeah,
lot
you
of-
can't pull your kids out of all their activities
No.
and then bring them home and put them in front of the TV.
Absolutely.
You know, that's not going to make for a valuable life either.
And when they're having problems, you want to point them to God. Well, they come to you with a problem with a friend. Well, what does the Word say about that? So important.
And I think, even as you said that, Kate, that's such a great way to be teaching and instructing our children is asking them questions that help them and making the most of the time to teach them to be a critical thinker
On
for
their own.
themselves. There are times where just that statement is important, but a lot of times as parents, if we're rushing here and there, we just want to tell. But sometimes it takes that time, and it's worth it in the long run if you're keeping the end goal in mind, which is to raise a responsible adult who knows the Word on their own but knows how to think critically about the world and has a worldview, to ask them questions.
Yeah, problem solve with them. Don't problem solve for them.
Oh,
Exactly.
great. That's a great
Thanks. You
tip.
can write that one down. I just came up with it now.
That's right. Great minds work together. I think I like. The benefit of the church.
That's
we
right.
all come together and we need each other. That's for sure.
Nancy, what have you found in your home?
Well, I found for my kids modeling does work the best if they, come down in the morning and see that I've made it a priority to have quiet time and that, that is important to me. And then, as I said, speaking about God and, as some of our family have told us, we talk about God a lot.
You've heard that from all your other family members?
We've heard that from a lot of people. So, and it's important to us, so we really do. But one thing that I heard recently that I just wanted to share from, it was a Mother Teresa quote, is that a lot of times success is not necessarily doing well or perfectly everything that you do, but continuing to be faithful. And I think as our kids see that we're faithful to our faith and to God and to growing and just always being there, I think a lot of times that they see that. And I loved that about helping them. I think I can do more of helping them to go to God and the Word for their answers. Because sometimes they'll come and ask you things and you want to just answer, but I think helping them to look for the answer is great.
I remember in college I took a class that was a death and dying class. And
That sounds fun.
That sounds really fun.
I'm signed for that.
Why would you sign up for
A whole
that?
semester.
Those cadavers, no, I think it was, at the time, I think it was one of those easy A's, and I had some other pretty difficult classes. But, one of the greatest benefits of that class that we were required to do was, and remember, you're, 18 to 22 when you're in these classes, but was to write your epitaph. And to think about what do you want people to say about you once you're gone. And I think that's one of the important things that God wants us to do is think, what is the end in mind that you want? What, number one, do you want your children to be saying about you when they leave college or when they come back home again? And if we're really thinking of our children and love them, what legacy do we want them to leave for having been on this earth? And if we understand every single person has been put on this earth for the purpose of bringing glory to God, but each have specific assignments and gifts and abilities and talents to do that. How can I help my child in the time that I have them to instruct them in the way that is going to make the most of the time that they do have, teaching them to number their days so they can get that heart of wisdom. But keeping that end goal in mind can help you to say, you know what, it might be easier today to drag them off here or to let them sit in front of the TV or play on the internet, but to keep in mind, is that going to be building on their character to build the kind of person in the long run I want them to be?
Or is this going to be a time when I look back, when I am packing up the car and we're driving off to college, I don't want there to be regrets. I don't want that sense of knowing, wow, I really allowed for there to be a lot of wasted time where they were alone or, playing on the internet or gaming or any of those types of things that really aren't productive. Because when we recognize it's short, such a short time, Scripture tells us that our whole life is but a mist that is here for a moment and gone. And yet, what we do with that, we are going to be held accountable for. And I want nothing more than to hear those words, well done, thy good and faithful servant. Not only for me, which I remind my children all the time, I have to answer and be held accountable before God for what I did with you and the time that we spent with you. And not only do I want to hear those words spoken over me and my life and what I've chosen to spend time doing, but also I want that for future generations of my family. And I just don't believe we can do that effectively or as well if our priorities are such that it's taking us all over the map for things. One thing that has really struck me is, have I prayed about this? I realized I was praying about all the big things in my kids' lives. What school to put them in? You know, we chose a private school. Well, where to live? We would pray about that. You know, all of those things were in prayer. But yet, when a new thing would come home for sign up for basketball, it was right down the street. I just filled it out and sent in the check. I never thought I should pray about this. Is this where God would have me spending our time and resources in this activity? You know, God did give them all their gifts and talents. So with us knowing that, we can recognize there may be a place where you see that pure passion and giftedness in something that God may be calling your child to, that sort of activity. But he knows that, and he'll guide you as to where that time should be spent. And as soon as I really started doing that, it was amazing the things that went off the calendar.
Well, and Jamie, I want to just, you know, when you were saying about praying, at one point I was a career woman who had, you know, was working at least 60, usually closer to 80, 90 hours a week, and I had 2 small children at the time. And those are the years I do regret, but I know God works all things together for good. But I'll never forget that there was a woman when I had determined that I was going to quit, and I was involved in a, you know, meeting with some very prestigious people. And one of the women, when I had told her that I was feeling the Lord after praying, had led me to make that decision to quit, to go home and raise my kids. She came to me, and she literally had tears coming down, and she says, I can't tell you how much I would encourage you to do what you're doing, because my children are now in their 20s. And she said, I can never go back. And I realized when I took them off to college, Nancy, when you said that, it triggered me. She said, I looked at and I thought, I never really knew them. I had them here, there, and everywhere, but I wasn't the one that was really involved in their lives. And when we understand, and that helped so much to crystallize. Number one, it was a great affirmation God gave me. You're making the right decision. And I've never, ever looked back with regret. And I think when we look and see God's word, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose your soul? And along with that, as a parent, to know my greatest responsibility isn't to my work, it isn't to anything else. It's first to God, second to my spouse, but also to raising my child in the fear and admonition of the Lord. And that's time that will never be wasted. That's the time that you know. And we do that around, again, he instituted the family. And so we can look and say, you know, the time like Mary with sitting at Jesus' feet is important, but family time, because that is the basic institution. So I know, Kate, you shared a little bit about some family activities. There might be other ones you want to share besides wiffle ball. I think that's a great idea. Game night that you've got, Gina. So are there some other things that you do as families, or that you would encourage you know, people to be doing and saying, this is a great thing you can do as a family?
Well, we make it a point to eat dinner together every night, which may not seem like that big of a deal, but I think it's a really, really big thing. And we go around the table and we talk about, what did we do today? How was your day? Everybody goes around and they talk about it. And I think that's really, really important, because it creates a bond and a trust. And, you know, we really want our children to trust in us that we're going to guide them the right way. Kids will do whatever you do. We are their example. We lead by example. So, you know, whatever we're doing at the home, when we have family dinners together, whatever we're doing, they're going to see that as something that they crave and that they want. And I just think it's really, really important. I also sit down and I do my homework with my kids every single night. They're getting to the point, my daughter's getting to the point where she doesn't need the help, but you know, she really, really does struggle with math. She has a math tutor that we see, but I sit down with her and I do it. And, you know, I have to take many deep breaths and I have to say many prayers, because it can take an hour and a half. But that is something that I'm going to do to help her.
And there again, Gina, is where when you say you're doing it, I assume you're not doing her homework.
No,
But you're
that's why it's taking an hour and a half.
We'd love to do it.
I've got a lot of problems
Better
if it's
at
taking me that
math
long. But I mean, and it is because, you know, she's just waiting for the answer. Just give me the answer.
Yeah.
But
But
we're
to-
not. It's to better her. It's to help her,
show
to
her
make
how.
it help her in the future.
That's a great, yeah. What are some other things? Nancy?
We spend just a lot of time together as far as like being outside in the summer, biking together. We all enjoy biking, so we'll just go out in our neighborhood and bike and just spend time together. We're home a lot, I think,
Yeah.
so we're just doing things outside together and spending time together.
You know,
Those are the main.
one-on-one time is really important. That kind of popped into my head as we're talking. We do dates, especially if you have a bigger family, and even if you don't, you know, a date with one parent, and it's a special date, and they go out and do something they want, because sometimes you just need that one-on-one time with one child. So we try to rotate and do that. It's challenging, but I just, as we were talking, that's, I think, important, so you can have that time with them.
Awesome idea.
I think that's critical. In fact, my daughter babysits for our next door neighbor who's a homeschool mom with 7 children. So if you, on
Yeah.
your bad days, Kate, you could have 2 more. But that is one of the things that they absolutely has made as a priority. And I think there again, treasuring your time. There are family activities, but it is so important because those children, a lot of times, they need to learn what is it like to interface one-on-one with an adult, but also for you to be able to pour into them individually, which can be a greater challenge.
You
when
are
you've
telling
got so
him,
many.
you're
that
important. You are important enough for me to take out, and just you and I are going to talk, and we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. I think that's important.
Right. Another area I know for us was family devotions. I mean, we, and I would assume that maybe y'all do, but that would be our nightly ritual, was having family devotions. And like you said, Gina, that family dinner hour is, we hold that sacred. And again, we realize with people, I know Jamie's husband, you know, may be working really late, and depending on the commute or the day, it can be an impossibility to have the entire family, but at least you as the mom to sit with the kids, or at least to say, maybe not every day of the week, but at least 1 or 2 days to do that, but to have a nightly devotion with your children. And the one thing I would underscore is that that's important at all ages. And it's, I know we made the mistake, and one of my regrets with my older 2 was that when they got into high school, they were kind of like, okay, we've outgrown this family devotion thing. And that's when they needed it the most. But I was too green as a parent, and so I really let them do the running of the house. If I had that to do over again, I would have ensured, and we might have changed what we were doing. But I think that can be a real critical thing also, is to maintaining that. That's one of the best ways to ensure that the main thing is the main thing. And before you're going to bed at night, to say, this is what life is really all about. And it opens up the opportunity to answer their questions about God, or things that took place during the day. So it's what I think we realized, Jamie, as you said, teach us to number our days so that we would get a heart of wisdom, and that we would treasure the time that we do have on this earth with our children. Thank you for joining us with True View.
Hello? Patty, I've decided to follow your lead and file for Social Security benefits online.
But Kath, aren't you back in Zanzibar?
I just got on my laptop and went to socialsecurity.gov. It took less than 15 minutes.
Wow, you are a miracle worker.
Well, cheers, Patty. I'm off to film a baby rhino. Baby rhino?
The American Legion honors our newest generation of warriors and veterans. Please join us in supporting and recognizing their unique contributions and needs. Go to legion.org/honor veterans to find out more.